My mother-in-law embarrassed me on Facebook because I can't have children, so I shared evidence that it's actually my husband who was unable to have kids and he had kept this secret from me for years. Hey everyone, I'm a 29-year-old woman who got married to my 30-year-old husband 4 years ago. We started trying for a baby about 6 months ago, which was my idea because I felt ready to be a mom. I've always wanted a big, happy family since we got married. My husband wanted to wait a few more years, but I convinced him that now was the right time for us financially and health-wise. After almost 6 months of trying without success, I had a feeling it might be my husband's issue, even though we both needed tests. He was hesitant to get tested, but eventually we both did. As I expected, the results showed it was him who was infertile. It was disappointing news, especially since we would need expensive alternatives to conceive. We decided to put the baby plans on hold for now. This happened about a month ago, and while I tried to console him, he seemed more annoyed than sad. Now I know it's because it wasn't news to him at all, but I'll discuss that later. After she left, he explained that he wasn't emotionally ready to tell his mom about our situation right now. I wasn't fully satisfied with his explanation, but I respected his decision. He and his mom are very close, having relied on each other since his father passed away when he was young. He felt he had already let me down and wasn't prepared to disappoint his mom too. While I understood, it bothered me when his mom started bombarding me with texts and calls, offering pregnancy tips and insisting on taking me to a doctor. I was already struggling with the disappointment of not becoming a mother soon, and her reminders made it harder to move on. About a week and a half ago, I told my husband he needed to tell his mom the truth and ask her to stop contacting me so frequently. He agreed, and thankfully the calls finally stopped. She stopped reaching out entirely, which I found odd, but I was dealing with a lot myself, so I didn't bother reaching out to her. I convinced myself she would contact me when she was ready. I tried to focus on work to distract myself, but unfortunately I got a brutal reminder of everything when my mother-in-law posted a scathing message on Facebook about 5 days ago. She expressed regret about her son marrying me. I'll share the post here because I lack the energy to paraphrase it. 4 years ago, my son told me he was going to marry Eliza. I was thrilled, hoping he would have a happy family. I thought Eliza would help him achieve that. How wrong I was. This woman tricked my son into marrying her, only to reveal she's infertile after 4 years of deceit. I can't believe I allowed my son to marry this selfish woman who cares only for herself, her career, and her own feelings. Marrying her was the worst decision of your life, Rick. I'd urge all mothers to ensure the women who marry your sons are not like my cheating, scheming, and infertile daughter-in-law. I'll never forgive this woman for toying with my son's feelings and mine. She will be punished for the pain she's caused. She posted that 5 days ago, and obviously I was shocked. I rushed home as soon as possible. While my mother-in-law and I weren't the closest, we'd always been cordial, so this was a huge surprise to me. I had to leave work halfway through because relatives and friends were calling. Having seen the post, she tagged my husband and me in. Despite untagging myself, the damage was done, and people kept texting to ask what was happening. Ignoring all of that, I rushed home to talk to my husband about it. He hadn't answered my calls or texts, and only arrived home an hour after I did. He hadn't removed his tag from the post either, so it was still visible on his profile to all our mutual friends, which wasn't good. It then dawned on me that my husband had lied to his mother about who was infertile, and she believed him. I was furious and utterly confused, but I decided to stay and confront him before doing anything else when he finally arrived home. He tried to reassure me, saying it was all a misunderstanding, but I knew better. After I vented my frustration at him, he finally came clean. He admitted that he lied to his mom because he couldn't bear to tell her the truth. They had a big fight over it, with her even telling him to leave me. To spite this, he refused, and they hadn't spoken for a while after the argument. Out of spite and anger, she made that post, and he wanted me to ignore it. Naturally, I couldn't just brush off such public humiliation, especially when it wasn't even true. I told him he needed to come clean on his own and make his mother issue a public apology, or I would handle it myself. He tried to forbid me from taking action, and in that moment, I realized I was done with him. First, he lied to his mom about me, and now he thought he could control me and throw me under the bus for something that wasn't my fault. I told him to go to hell, packed a bag, and drove to the nearest hotel. There, I finally responded to the important calls and texts, particularly from my family. My parents live in another state, and although we're all busy with our own lives, they run a small business and I have my job. We always make time to catch up when we can. They had been supportive throughout my pregnancy, and I had kept them updated. When my parents learned about my husband's infertility, they didn't say anything negative about him or accuse him of anything, unlike my mother-in-law's actions towards me. This stark difference in upbringing shaped who we are as individuals and contributed to the contrasting personalities within our families. I had a conversation with my parents, explaining the fight I had with my husband and how I had left him to stay in a hotel. They expressed pride in my decision to stand up for myself and offered to come over and support me in any way they could. However, I declined their offer, feeling reassured by their faith in me. I thought leaving would be the hardest part, but I was mistaken. Although my mother-in-law's post was deleted a few hours after I left, the damage had already been done. Many people had seen it, but I focused solely on my immediate family and friends. I had already explained the situation to them, so I didn't feel the need to discuss it further with anyone else. Since receiving the fertility test results, I had been deeply upset and my relationship with my husband had become strained. Despite my efforts to cheer him up, he remained constantly irritable. His reaction to the post was the final straw for me, cementing my decision to leave him. So I finally left without any clear plans for the future. Deep down, I knew divorce was likely inevitable, but a part of me hoped for an apology and reconciliation from him. However, that apology never came. Instead, I received a text from a woman claiming to be his ex-girlfriend 3 days ago. Initially skeptical, she proved her identity by sending old photos of her with my husband. She revealed that she was his girlfriend before me and that they had been together for about 3 years. I met my husband when I was 23, and after 2 years of dating, we got married. He had never mentioned any serious relationships before me, but according to her, they had plans to marry, having been together since college until just before I met him. Their breakup occurred because she wanted to start a family, but they discovered he was infertile after trying unsuccessfully to conceive. Although they weren't married due to her parents' wishes, they were emotionally committed to building a life together. However, the fertility issue led to conflict and ultimately their separation. She wanted to warn me about his past but chose to stay out of our relationship. She initially felt it wasn't her place to interfere but later found out about my mother-in-law's post from another college friend. Feeling a sense of obligation, she decided to inform me about my husband's past. The news left me in a state of shock, and I remember breaking down into tears, feeling as if everything I knew about my husband was a lie. For a full day, I was unable to do anything productive, consumed by feelings of betrayal. I couldn't shake the thought that my husband could have been honest with me from the start. Eventually, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I posted the results of my husband's fertility test on Facebook, tagging both him and his mother, mirroring my mother-in-law's actions when angered. Although both of us had received the results, I knew it would only serve to humiliate him. Admittedly, it was a petty and spiteful move on my part. I turned off my phone to avoid any immediate backlash. Unsurprisingly, my husband called the next morning, furious and accusing me of ruining his life. He argued that his mother's post had only been up for a short time, unlike mine, which remained throughout the night and into the morning. He was unaware that I had discovered his past with his ex-girlfriend and his prior knowledge of his infertility. In response, he claimed that my action was still unjustifiable, although I knew deep down that he had a point. Despite acknowledging the pettiness of my actions, I stood by my decision. I'm struggling with conflicting emotions regarding my decision to publicly share my husband's fertility report. Maybe I acted impulsively, driven by anger and hurt, or perhaps he deserved the exposure. I'm here seeking clarity because I'm unsure of my judgment amid the turmoil I'm facing. I felt compelled to share his report online after my mother-in-law falsely accused me of infertility on Facebook and criticized his choice to marry me. However, after reflecting on the situation, I realized that stooping to their level for petty revenge isn't who I want to be. While he may have deserved the consequences, I don't want to perpetuate their behavior. Today, I've finally initiated divorce proceedings 2 weeks after leaving home. I removed the post after considering the comments, recognizing that although he deserved it, I didn't want to escalate the situation further. With the support of a lawyer recommended by a friend, settling should be straightforward given his actions. We haven't communicated since his last text, and I'm content with the distance. I also reached out to his ex to express gratitude for revealing the truth, acknowledging that I had been withdrawing emotionally but am now focusing on self-improvement. This marriage wasn't meant to be, and I'm accepting that. I'm relieved we didn't have a child, as it would complicate an already difficult situation. Moving forward, I've relocated to a friend's house where we'll share expenses, providing a fresh start in a better neighborhood. I used to live in a house, but he'll keep it since he contributed more financially. Hopefully, I'll eventually get my share back. However, I need to return home to retrieve some of my belongings. Living with just 5 outfits isn't sustainable, and there are items I left behind. I've already communicated with him briefly to arrange a time for me to collect my things. It's going to be awkward seeing him after so long given the circumstances, but it's necessary for closure. The thought of divorce proceedings is unsettling. It's hard to believe I spent 4 years with someone only to realize it was all based on lies. I just hope tomorrow goes smoothly without any uncomfortable moments. Update: I'm now in my new home and it's late, so please forgive any errors. Today I met him in person and it was a strange, intense experience. He and I didn't exchange many words, not wanting to make my friend uncomfortable with whatever tension existed between us. We packed our belongings quietly while he watched the game in the living room. My friend and I kept silent, focused on completing the task at hand. Before I left, my husband stopped me, expressing a desire to talk privately. My friend waited in the car as we sat down to converse. He apologized, sounding genuinely remorseful, but the damage was irreversible. I couldn't bring myself to forgive him immediately. The wounds were too fresh, too recent. While I didn't offer forgiveness, I did question why he had lied to me for so long. He admitted he had hoped for different test results this time, a response that left me dumbfounded. Despite his denial, I empathized with his desire for children. However, I made it clear that our divorce would be inevitable and communication afterward unlikely. I urged him to seek help for his actions, but he remained silent. Leaving without further discussion, I felt a strange sense of relief. Confronting him one last time and speaking my truth was cathartic. Now I hope to move forward and leave this chapter behind me.